And good morning. Right. I feel that things are working today. Can't really tell. I made a huge video yesterday and apparently the microphone wasn't on. I had a huge amount of silence to go with it. So already you can tell we're better off. Look, I do have some quick references here and I do have a script. And I went to check aspects of my script using my trusty it's got to be mid-21st century. It actually says 20th century dictionary. No, yeah, 20th century. Okay, so probably 70 years old. There's a date in the front of it to suggest it was given to a fellow in 1955. Sadly tells the story of the times. It was given to a fellow, you could say it's 50-50, but I think it was generally men that went to education bodies and were encouraged to do these sorts of things. And you can say that was before that time. But, it's to say it's outdated, it's very fair to say. And so part of the subject today is to be mimetic fields. And the notion of as above, so below, or, energy and attractor patterns, I guess, are some headings there that might be relevant. And I guess without being able to give definition to those things, there's some pretty heavy concepts involved. And why are they relevant? Why are they relevant towards bringing about world peace? And why are they relevant to you? Well, by the very nature of these things existing, I suppose they're relevant to all of us. And so therefore they're part of the topic for today. And I suppose the notion is that we're not, at any point, we're not really an island. We're not really isolated. We're not really operating just on ourselves. I suppose the concept is that every person should refine themselves or work on themselves. And usually that is because we interact with the world around us. And so there's that, by working on ourselves, the greater good, the greater whole is better for it. And I guess I've presented reasons why I talk about how, as a whole, and the vision that I give towards world peace is that it all works together. And my apologies, the framing on this camera is a lot tighter. Now I've got my hands in shot. Oh dear. And the hands are so good because you can communicate with your hands. In fact, some cultures, that's a big thing, that we do all sorts of our communication with our hands. So I guess I'm ripping people off, and I really could just be a disembodied voice on camera, and we could have footage of a local sprinkler, local river, or some sort of burbling brook, and that would be really pretty to look at, rather than me. I suppose I put myself on camera to for people to see the genuineness, I guess, in my body language. That there's something important being spoken about. But when it comes to talking about quantum physics, I suppose, or these high energy, these aspects of math and science that is arguably beyond my brain. In fact, from what I understand, most people who get into quantum physics, the very nature of what they're studying is sort of beyond everyone's brain. It's beyond a paradigm shift. It sort of revolutionises the way that the universe behaves, well, our understanding of the way the universe behaves. And anyway, my apologies. I'm trying to roll with this video very, very quickly, and because it's such a complex topic, and I guess I deeply question whether the watchers of this video will have any understanding of the initial concept. Now, so already I've lost 99% of anyone watching this video because I dawdle, which I don't once I get into the meat and potato of the videos, I like to believe, but certainly for the first 2 or 3 minutes I typically take a moment, and that's for us to get our pace, if you will. And today I'm probably just deeply concerned that it's even possible to talk about these things in a way where anyone will actually believe that they're relevant. And so I won't invest a lot of energy into trying to convince people. And I certainly wouldn't want people to believe that I operate my business under quack concepts that aren't necessarily science or necessarily provable. And I say operate my business. I'd like to believe that any aspect of me being feedback to a body that sets up and runs said charity that is all about improving quality of life, that if the thoughts or the feelings that belong to me are then going to pervade it or change it, that then yeah, I guess it does matter, and this is why you probably want to qualify on a camera who I am. But look, as a whole, it's greater than the individual, such as myself, and there's certainly finite limits in terms of what any one person could construct or deconstruct in said organisation. The idea is that things are better by having a body or an improving body. And I think if we get kinesiologists involved, or we get certain kinesiologists can get a yes or a no answer to any question they essentially ask. And so when you have that in the stages of your upper management, in terms of is it worth investing further time into this project, or is it, that wouldn't be the question kinesiologically speaking. There might be quite a few questions and qualifying statements. And I believe it allows us to keep focused and keep on task in the most effective and efficient ways possible. And that is very important, and possibly a little bit revolutionary. But look, regarding hermetic fields, this notion of what I find is that a lot of the books around the world have parallels, right? So if you go and look at most of the belief systems in most of the world's modern religions, the common ground that they cover, and arguably even down to their tenets, you often find there's a lot of overlap, a lot of parallels. And I think there's an old notion which is as above, so below. And my understanding is there's a book, Zen and the Art of Quantum Physics, and it sort of looks at, aspects of it, I guess, cover a lot of the things that like Zen monks have been saying for thousands and thousands of years are actually equivalent to the latest breakthroughs in quantum physics. So everything old is new again, let's just say that, but it's not entirely true, because when I go and grab a 70-year-old dictionary, there's a lot of it's outdated. A lot of the terms I went looking for weren't there. So I guess what I'm pitching as an archetype might not be set well in the modern construct of people's minds, and so that generally means that it doesn't carry a lot of weight. We find that the archetypes that are old, say Arthurian legend and concept of the Grail Cup, or fire has more of a weighing in the human mind than lasers do, because lasers are a new modern world thing. And so when I start throwing around terms like quantum physics and hermetic fields, it's sort of hard to digest. We have no reason to want to swallow that pill. But it's quite appropriate, because this notion that, and I think one of the easy ways to describe such things is the notion of, I guess, the fractal, and that we see repeating patterns and an unfolding of something. And it repeats. I mean, that's essentially, a fractal can usually be boiled down to some fairly simple mathematical formulas, and then you can unpack them, and they can create these beautiful pictures. And so the notion is there's this wave of repeating information, arguably, and as you look at it, the microcosm or the macrocosm, you can choose to learn about the universe by looking outward. You can choose to learn about the universe possibly by looking inward. And so our spot on this journey is our viewpoint is very human. But let's just take for a second the fantasy that this concept of hermetic fields, or these attractor patterns, these fractals, if you will, and these concepts of energy fields that, I guess, have gravitation, and that things sort of follow an order and then come to alignment with them. And they can be overarching structures that lesser structures give to, that they concede to, but they generally, everything aligns to ideally, possibly a higher energy state, and we find that things then settle into quite rigid constructs in their part of the pattern, if you will. Quite rigid constructs. I'm talking here about crazy energy theories. But let's just work with an if statement then. The human race believes that others can do peace. Okay, so my apologies, this statement wasn't well fleshed out, and it goes on to have more to say with it. But look, I guess it's working from the point of view of responsibility. And if we work, this is the foundation of what I'm talking about here, if we work off the belief that others are going to do peace, and therefore our efforts don't necessarily matter, that's not really how it plays out. So, some person thinks that it's all right if they use dirty play market tactics, or lie or behave dishonestly. There's ramifications of such actions. They're pervasive, they have effect and affect on us all. And I love affect and I love effect. Now, ramifications. I had to look that one up. That was ramus. I understand what these things mean when I write them down. I use the words that come to mind that allow me to write succinctly when I'm taking my notes. And having to look up ramus. And ramifications, I believe... Oh, now I'm getting confused with pervasive. Ramifications is that it's going to affect us. It's going to... Oh dear, it's probably the worst video I've ever done. Yeah, that's saying something. Please, I did just look this up a moment ago, and I think the fact that I'm getting stuck on the terms means that I shouldn't. I'm sweating the small stuff, and let's just not do that. And instead of me being fallible and trying to give a definition that's wrong, instead of me trying to state why my statement is meaningful or that words have import, let's just pretend that I screwed up and that statement isn't needed at all, and we'll spin forward. But I guess when it comes down to affect and affect, affect is to act upon, affect is to bring about. And I recall asking a uni lecturer constantly, like regarding the human body and how things affected and affected. And I'm like, what? Affect? Effect? Effect? A, E, right. Subtle differences. But I just use them both in a sentence. And it's because pervasive is like to go through, and effect and affect, it is both. Now, if we have dirty energy, if we believe we can go about and continue in business systems that are ultimately detrimental to the human race, but it's all right because other areas of the planet are doing okay. If we take a step back and understand or believe that there is a greater unifying energy field, that there is that we all align to a greater whole, you know, what part of the picture are you contributing to? What energy system is it that you're doing? So, you know, if it is repeating energy fields playing out this giant fractal we know as reality, you know, where do you align? What energy waves or manifestation are you setting up or giving? And so there is there's a responsibility then that if we are part of a greater whole, that we need to be operating more in accordance with the light. And again, I really probably feel that this video I shouldn't put up. I'm going to put it up because it's foundation that we can call it spirituality. We can call it, call it something crazy. And because there's an aspect of everyone needs to have their own belief systems, freedom for their own spirituality or religion. Okay, humour me for a second. I don't say I ascribe to any of this, but it's a pretty good what-if concept. Because the world is a very, very large place right now, and a lot of us act on the basis that the actions that we do have small ripples in a pond, and that ultimately don't play out to anything. That we can do underhanded market tactics, or that we can operate in ways that aren't sustainable by the planet, in a range of reasons. Even if it's just creating service channels that aren't needed, it ultimately is. Look, I'll spin forward so that today's video can just be super short. The premise is that there's these energy waves, these energy fields, and that we need to align possibly with the more beautiful parts of their unfolding energy. Look, if I feel we need to do things once, or at least step to a mindset that operates that way. We can't work on the basis that everything's replaceable. We can't build poorly. We need to buy for the long term. We need to build for the long term. We need to focus our efforts on doing things once, doing them right. Right by us, which is also right by our loved ones and right by our planet. Now, usually if you're going to write an essay of some sort, or if you're going to write a really good convincing speech, there's some really simple formats to work to, and usually you put an introduction, you put out a concept, and then you explore it a little bit and explain what it is. And you might have paragraph 1, paragraph 2. Sometimes you get into paragraph 3, which you've introduced a couple of terms and given some explanation or some argument for why these things are sound. And then sometimes, to show that you've really, really thought about the argument, you do what's called the rebuttal. You know, sometimes paragraph 3, you can introduce either another term supporting your cause, or you argue against your cause as if you're playing devil's advocate and you've covered, by thought, everything relating to it. And so arguably when you put your conclusion down, hopefully the persuasive argument that is your essay, is so convincing that the person will walk away based off your conclusion. Go, yeah, everything you said was sound. I see in your conclusion you refer back to your paragraph 1 or your point 1. You refer back to your point 2, and when you put these things together in such a way, it all flows together and it's strong. It's tight, and therefore the document stands as a whole. And this video, clearly for the way I've uttered and muttered my way through it, it probably doesn't have the inherent strength, even if I'm talking about very, very strong concepts. As I say, if the archetype of them is such that they're so new that they're not in everybody's mindset, and if people don't generally or wholly believe in them, then it's easy to be dismissive of smaller parts of it. And the smaller parts of it are so foundating to the greater parts of what I just span through really quickly. I've got quite a few pages of notes, but I feel I'm already weak in front of the camera, that spending less time making eye contact and more time trying to read pigeon, chicken scrawl text that generally I work off the writings, that I have small amounts of text and I can flesh them out with greater ideas. But I don't feel I'm doing a good job. I guess that lack of confidence is possibly undermining my greater whole as a message that I'm trying to pass right now. But look, it's fair to say if we accept the fantasy that the universe is one beautiful fractal playing out, that the human race might be a part of it, that the Earth is a part of it. And dimensional speaking, it's beyond the concept of our dimensional mind. I mean, we experience, I think they say the universe might be like an 8-dimensional reality, that the math of that works out. It doesn't collapse on itself at certain aspects of it. But certainly humans, not even a handful really of dimensions that we kind of experience or operate in. Well, we operate in all of them, but we don't really have the senses necessarily to understand the ripples of the currents in ways that might be deeper and more profound. It's fair to say that there might be mystics or monks that have contemplated their navel up on a hill, and they've probably had a dream state where they've tried to look at the world in a different light or a different view, and they might have taken away some poetry from that, which might make it more digestible to the human race as a whole, some crazy concept. But the notion that we are a sea of energy, and that we don't operate, I think the word's autonomously, that we're not as isolated as we feel, that our actions aren't as we do have a ripple effect. We do affect others, and it's ongoing. And so at what point do we have to say enough is enough? At what point do we have to start operating beautifully? And I guess my pitch is that we operate beautifully as a whole. And it's not just spiritual mumbo jumbo. It's not this notion that it's a rule set that might work well for me and not for others. It's that we need to orchestrate our community and our society as a whole from the ground up, that there is an ongoing wave of energy that we're putting out. And I don't mean all sitting around praying at the same time, although that's fantastic if transcendental meditation, I think it might be. The sorts of combined energies of a group is fantastic. Heck, you only have to go to the notion of a cone of power and a little witch coven of 12, the way they would channel energy. We're definitely greater when we work in groups. And the notion of prayer energy from one individual being so powerful, so incredibly measurable, but not scientific, because it's not 100% repeatable. And it might just be that not everyone aligns to that type of energy, and therefore they just don't do very well with said things. But there's a lot of things that aren't scientific, and I come from a lot of scientific areas on the internet where what we talk about as our holy grail every day, and we're talking here about just mundane human assets, and there's so much argument between all the people, all the members of the forum, over the concept